You guys will just pick a number. I think we can figure it all out. So they asked me to chair a conversation with these young brothers up here. So, I'll try to stick to the script and see what we come up with. How's that?
Just ad lib.
We'll see what we got. So I'm Chris Gandy. I'm one of your national trustees, loyal NAIFA member since 2005. So let's just start off with an introduction really quickly.
Pierre, Greene. I'm a wealth planner with CNF Bank.
Amir, independent insurance agent.
Omari, Executive Director and Chief Operating Officer for NAIA, the National African American Insurance Association.
Welcome, gentlemen. And NAIFA welcomes you. Let's give them a round of applause. So I stumbled on this study. I'm friends with Charles Briggs, who was, I think, past president of NAIA, and I'm a member of both associations. I have been for the last probably 7 years when I stumbled on NAIA through actually one of our NAIFA members, John Wheeler. I don't know if Wheeler's still in here, but he was actually a member before me. He was not what I would say diverse. He's unique, but not diverse. So we'll start off with that talking about the study, and then we'll kind of get into our bits and pieces, all right? So in this study, it's the second edition that NAIA did. It's called The Next Steps in the Journey. Has anything changed? So Omari, we'll start with you. Would you give us some background briefly on the study itself and the key headlines and the findings?
Absolutely. So it is part 2 to a study that initially happened in 2018, the Journey of African American Insurance Professional Study, a partnership between NAIA and Marsh, and authored by Dr. Leroy Nunnery, based out of Philadelphia. And that study was groundbreaking. It was the first time that anyone had ever really studied the careers, barriers to entry, barriers to retention, barriers to advancement of African Americans within the insurance and risk management industry. And thinking about all levels and all role types within the industry as well. And so there were a number of things that were in that study, talked about the need for us to create more inclusive environments. Really, all of the last presentation, right? All of those things was captured in the first study. And obviously, significant things have happened in the world since 2018. And so we already had questions about, did people do anything with the recommendations that we made from the first study? Did we launch ERGs? Did we do unconscious bias training? Did we launch mentorship programs and sponsorship programs? And so that was why we did the second study, which was released in January of this year, Next Steps on the Journey. Has anything changed? And the short answer is not really. So the two key findings that I would share with you all from the study, one was that there's a lot of activity. So certainly, and I'm sure you might have this gut reaction, when I read the data, I said, nothing's changed? Like, not really? That doesn't sound right. Like, there's been a whole lot of activity. We've seen all these public commitments, particularly following George Floyd's murder, right? And so all these statements, all these different efforts, all of this charitable giving, right? All these statements to support Black Lives Matter, right? And so lots of lots of activity, but not movement and progress, right? So when we look at where African Americans tend to sit in organizations, when we look at the number of African American agents who are able to get appointments, and even be able to get capital to start up their agencies, right? Still very low. So that was the first finding. The second was particularly for corporations and carriers, people that take on responsibility in the diversity, equity, inclusion space. So serving as an employee resource group chair, helping to weigh in on training and facilitating training in the organization. These stretch assignments, growth assignments that we know are essential for people to get visibility and exposure leading to promotion are not valued the same as other types of stretch assignments and growth assignments in the organization. So as much as we say as an industry and as a society that we value diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging, justice, liberation, add all of your words there, what the data is showing us is that we still see it as a separate thing on the side. We still see it as a list of items that need to be checked off to be able to say, we did the thing, we launched the group, we had the training, right? And so now we should all sing Kumbaya and everything should be all right.
Right. It's interesting. It's interesting you say that. So 2020, we saw everybody jump on the bandwagon, right? To create the narrative of DEI. They launched programs, mandated that people participate. Pierre, how can organizations either A, add to that, keep that going, and what specific actions can the industry take to move the needle?
Thank you. I think the first thing we need to do is look at our C-suite executive leadership teams or look at our HR teams. What do they look like? Many of our organizations, we put African Americans and people of color in middle management. And what that means is they're a management position, but they have no influence. When they want to hire, they have to go upstairs to get permission. And when you look at our HR, we hire the lens that we look through. So if everyone looks like me, that's all I'm going to gravitate to. And so I think it's important for us as organizations to really look at ourselves. And if we don't know the answer, ask people that can help us to get the answer. But right now, I feel like DEI is really a checkbox. In 2023, my firm has been around for over 95 years. I'm the first African American. Let that sit in. It's 2023. That's not good. And another thing, we talk about the C-suite. We only put women in HR positions. They're the head of HR. Why are they not the CEO or CFO or COO? If we're serious about DEI, we have to put our money where our mouth is and let our actions align with that. And so I think as organizations, I'm glad to see you all in this room, but it should be filled. I have 18 years of experience in the industry. I worked for New York Life, Northwestern, Guardian, and many times I was the only one that looked like me. And that has to change. So I think we have to really put the dollars and put the infrastructure to support and recruit. Because as the study said prior, when you have a diverse sales force, your bottom line goes up. Everybody wins. And if you look at our world, our workforce should mimic what we see walking down DC Street or walking down a street in your neighborhood in New York, Chicago, wherever you may be at. And so we have to change that narrative and recruit and highlight our industry because this is the best industry in the world. Do y'all believe that? Okay, this is the best industry in the world. And so with that being said, we have to expose these younger people that's coming behind us and people of color. We're talking about African Americans, but something that we don't talk about is the Latin community. That's a community that we're all missing. All right, I'm going to get off the soapbox.
Stay on the soapbox.
Okay. So supplier diversity and partnerships are growth opportunities in the DEI space. So Amir, we're coming to you. What should organizations be thinking about when it comes to identifying and working with minority-owned businesses?
Actually identifying and working with minority-owned businesses.
That is the answer. Okay.
It's really simple, right? Don't say that you want to do this. I'm going to do X. Our firm is going to do X, right? And then when it's time for you to do X, say, oh, we couldn't find anyone. Like I have a real life example of 4 companies that all of us know about because they're insurance carriers. And they stated in writing, we couldn't find a minority partner. Now, mind you, I represent a firm that is a broker for the city that they're doing this business in. That's a minority certified firm. And they couldn't find a firm. So they couldn't find it, or did they not look for it, right? So as Doc Nunnery, we call him Doc Nunnery, would say, are you checking the box or are you moving the needle?
Got it. All right, so let's go back to the study. So the study highlights lack of mentorship, sponsorship in the space of specifically insurance and financial services. So Pierre, from your own experience, all right, from your experience, as a mentee and both a mentor, how do you describe the critical importance of mentorship and how it's underrepresented with current talent?
It's vital to your success. I'm pretty sure we all can attest to that. If it wasn't for me having a mentor who did not look like me but saw the potential in me to guide me down this path, I probably would have been out the industry a long time ago. And so I take it as a responsibility to help those that are coming behind me. We have this great organization, NAIFA here, where I guess I'm a senior statesman in the organization. I've been in the business 18 years. I know I look young. Thank you. And so when I get young African American men and women or people of color, I feel an obligation to help them. And so I become the mentor now. And so it's having tough conversations and not, I like to tell them, you're not going to be a victim, you're going to be a victor. Things may not go the way you want it to go. It's not going to be fair, but that doesn't mean you're going to give up. We're going to continue to fight the path and move forward. So I feel like it's so important. And if you're not a mentor, you need to be a mentor. And something that we didn't talk about was sponsorships. I have a group of friends that we are committed to each other to saying that when we go into certain rooms, what individuals should be in these rooms with us that are not in this room? And so we try and bring their name up so they can get into these circles, because the more circles that we can get into, the more impact we can have, the more change that we can see. So I understand that, yes, I can be an independent and worry just about me, but being in the seat that I'm in now, I'm able to open doors of individuals that's going to come behind me and take it to another level. So it's legacy planning at the end of the day.
Okay. Which we talk about when we talk about planning. Right? We talk about multi-generational planning and the opportunity to build generational wealth and the importance of it. That's a very strong topic in the minority community. We're going to get to a little bit of that. So the next that study also talks about that the disconnect, right? So companies adopted the DEI initiatives, but then when it comes to the execution of actually doing it, there's some disconnect. So Omari, what do you see as the key differences between the organizations of what they're saying they're doing versus the actual things they're actually doing? And what are your recommendations so they can close the gap?
Yeah. I think many organizations had great intentions publishing their list of all the actions that they were going to do, right? And one of the difficult things, particularly in this industry, we all have a tendency to be a little type A-ish. We like to be able to close some things out, right? And you really have to commit to non-closure with this work. There is not a end in mind. You're not going to launch the sponsorship program or the mentorship program, or you're going to promote 5 people, you're going to hire 10 people, and then be like, problem solved, right? This work is ongoing. It is a forever journey. And all of us are walking this path for a little while, and we're passing the baton to someone behind us. What I really see as the key thing for organizations and individuals to focus on is making sure that your good intentions go beyond the performative actions. And small example of that is particularly with employee resource groups. I've been an ERG leader many times over in my career. And what I often see is organizations will launch an employee resource group or a business resource group, or if you're in the Marsh McLennan family, a colleague resource group. They'll stand them up, and the group will do a couple of events, a networking event, maybe throw a social, and everybody goes, this is great. And what we don't do next is make sure that the group has access to executive leadership, that they have an audience with all the key folks in the company, including the CEO, right, and the C-suite, to be able to have a seat at the table to drive toward the strategy that the company is executing on, right? So it's more than throwing a Black History Month event or a Pride Month event, right? Like we're really good at doing all of those things.
Juneteenth is right around the
Juneteenth
corner.
is coming up,
Oh, yeah,
right?
that one.
We're an Asian
about that one.
Pacific, Native Hawaiian. There's a couple other letters there. Heritage Month now, right? And so it's not just going to go visit Chinatown in your city, but it's how are you continually beyond the events, engaging the community, making sure that you're hearing from the community, particularly when the community is not represented in leadership rooms.
So in the 2060 year of NAIA, its mission has been to add diversity into the insurance and financial services industry. So Amir, how does the organization like NAIA continue to push the industry at large on an inclusive level and locally and nationally?
Well, I think it does that by pouring into us and making sure that we are taking an active role in our community, and that people that, as Pierre said, people that are coming behind us see us. and see people like us in their industry. And I would have a challenge for all of you all. Right? And I would ask you, how many black friends do you have? How many white friends do you have? How many gay friends do you have? And how many of you all just have friends? If we get to the point where we just have friends, then that'll make all of our organizations better. Right?
I like that.
So it sounds like people agree,
A little bit.
right? People agree. And so, you know, I'm going off script here, right? So if they agree by the applause, I want to just go right down the list. What is one thing that people can take today, not 2 days, not a week, now they got to go back and do strategic planning. What is one thing they can take today? By the way, take your notes out and write this down. What can they do? And we'll start here. What can they do now to impact and be a part of the change? So not just talk about it, but be part of the change. So it's implemented and part of our, you know, DEI is in our DNA, right? So it's either it is or it's not. So we have to start with that. So what can they take today and do right now?
All right, I'll give you one and a bonus. So one, y'all are already here. This is the DEI Symposium, right? Like you're drinking the Kool-Aid unless you were voluntold to be here as opposed to volunteered to be here. So first thing is find a friend, find a couple of friends and bring them with you, right? To these kind of events and these kind of programs. Because you're bought in to some degree, right? At least for the fact that you're here. Make sure that there are others here. Voluntold some other people to be in rooms like this. As Pierre said, like this room should be full. Second, and so my bonus one is what we learned in our first study, The Journey of African American Insurance Professionals, is that the way that African Americans tend to come into the insurance and risk management industry is by invitation. I came in because my college roommate was working for Liberty Mutual Insurance at the time, and I was working for Macy's. And he said, you should come over here and make some real money. And so I did, right? So that's how I came into the industry. By the way, my college roommate is white. So it's not necessarily that the invitation has to come from a person of color to another person of color, but intentionally invite people of color into the insurance industry.
If you have the ability to make DEI a priority at your company, make that position an executive position, not an HR position. Make it a C position, not part of HR's responsibility. Because people listen to HR, but they only listen to HR when they need something from HR versus it coming from the C-suite.
To his point, give them a team to support them. It can't just be one person. A lot of the DEI, if you look at the org chart, is one person, and there's no one else. What I would tell you to do is go to your HR department and develop a relationship with the HBCUs in your community. Make it a priority to develop internships so you can recruit and retain these talented individuals that are coming up in the industry. So if you don't have a relationship with the HBCU, go get one.
You know, we didn't say this, and all of us on the stage are NAIA members, and Pierre's the vice president of the Central Virginia chapter in Richmond. Amir is the president of our Metro DC chapter, right?
We just
here.
changed our name.
Just fresh new name, right? Fresh name. You're in the Chicago chapter, right? So also join NAIA. We'd love to have you with us as well, and you can also bring a friend.
Wonderful. And my comment would be, you know, I've been in multiple roles as an advisor, mentor, you know, a bunch of different areas. But, you know, I always comment that if you want to be a part of the change, do business with somebody that doesn't look like you. It's okay to be intentional, and that's an opportunity, right? If you do business and you find yourself doing business subconsciously with everybody who kind of looks like you, let's find somebody who doesn't look like you and do business with them, right? That indirectly helps the initiative. So let's talk about recruiting, shall we? Mm-hmm. So there's 400,000 people retiring. You know, everybody's talking about, we just saw the statistic that there's people retiring, 10,000 every day, insane numbers. how can we get more people into this industry, specifically the Gen Y, the Gen Zers, right? So how do we get more of them into the industry?
I'll take this one.
You all can take it. I mean,
I've been around a little longer.
Go
so
ahead.
I'll take this one. There's this myth that insurance as a whole is not sexy. That's where we have to start, right? We have to change the narrative that insurance, excuse me, insurance isn't sexy. Because I guarantee you, we can do a poll. The income that you make from your insurance practice, your financial advisory practice, is very sexy. Right?
it's quite attractive.
It's right, right?
Quite attractive.
When I was having a cappuccino outside of the Coliseum, I thought about how sexy this felt, right? And that was because of my income from the insurance and financial services industry. So that's what I would say.
I would say exposure. Make it mainstream. We don't talk about it. We talk about STEM, but we don't talk about insurance. You can have a great career. You don't have to have nowhere near the amount of student loan debt if you get a bachelor's degree and come into the business. And so I think it's really having the conversation. We don't talk about insurance. We talk about the other things that glitz and glamour. But this is, when you think about it like this, I tell people when something happened to you, I'm going to be either, if not the second, but definitely the top third of people you're going to call. You're going to call your loved one, and you're going to call me typically to make sure financially we're going to be okay. That's a pretty big deal, guys. And so I think we have to have that conversation more often with our younger people. Talk to them about it. Let them see it. And when they see it, this generation is a lot smarter than us. Let's just call it ace of ace. They have technology in their hands, and they're good with it. And so they're going to research. If we say something that's not accurate, they're going to call us out on it. So we have to make sure that we're truthful and expose them to the beauty of the insurance or financial service industry.
Absolutely. I would just say quickly, from the study, we looked at who responded to the study and who didn't respond, and we noticed that there were a couple of populations that were missing. And so partly why the stage is so beautiful to me, Black men, C-suite and senior executives, millennials and Gen Z, LGBTQIA plus community, all are populations that are really, and particularly the trans community, drastically underrepresented within our industry. And so as we think about who to invite from our friend groups, and as we do more work in the community, as we go into schools and we participate in career days and career fairs and all of that stuff, right? Talking about the industry, I think it's important for us all to be really intentional with definitely seeking out groups that are missing from the industry at large. And that's not to say that there's not still significant opportunity with all women groups, the Latinx community, right? Certainly you can go down the line for all of them, but one of the things that we found when we were looking at the data at large is those in particular, those four groups were ones that were missing.
Got it. So I'm looking at we have 5 minutes, 7 minutes. What do we got? We got a good 7. So we're gonna open it up for questions, but I think it's important that I think everybody hears that. I want to make a comment. The first comment I'm going to make is none of these gentlemen up here are things that we see, quote unquote, in the news, right? They're all professional individual. The news has a tendency to spin things in a way where they say, okay, this isn't. You see no one up here who's an angry black man, okay? But it is a narrative. It is a narrative that gets spun on a regular basis. And unfortunately, that's a challenge, right? So I want to talk about challenges specifically in this industry, right? So, and we'll start at the furthest from me. But what is the hardest thing you've had to overcome? And it could be an experience. It could be a situation. But I want everyone here to hear that these aren't necessarily African American. These aren't African American struggles, but they're normal struggles. But here's like to the nth degree of what some of these things may be. So we'll start with you at the end.
All right. Microaggressions. They may seem subtle, but they have a tendency to, they can cut. And so I have to understand, having a thick skin when you go into work to understand that what they say or how they may treat you it is what it is. I'm not going to allow that to deter me from my goals. And so that's something that I had to learn. And, you know, just recently, I'll share this with you all. I had an incident where a staff, I have 3 assistants that work for us, and she asked me a question. She said, "How do you wash your hair?" I looked at her like, what do you mean? Like you. You know, and her comment was, and this is a woman that's in their 60s. I've never had a black friend or person that I've been around that had hair like you. Can I touch it? No, you can't touch it.
What is that fascination?
But I watch it like you. Now, if I'd have responded in a negative way, I would have got painted the picture. He's aggressive. It's a big black guy. Oh my God, I was afraid. That was very insulting, though. And I don't think she meant it in an insulting way, but she really was not aware of how her question sounded, you know? And so it's things like that. That's not okay.
Well, I'll push back a little bit. I am an angry black man.
I was waiting for you to say that. I was going to say it for you.
I just am. For any number of reasons.
You're from D.C., so
From
it's
DC.
all good.
I'm a native Washingtonian. Too many tourists. Cherry blossoms. But I guess the thing that gets me is, and this is across the board, everybody, right? We're just not nice to each other anymore. Like the country, excuse me, the country itself is just not nice to anymore. Like you can't say hi, it's a problem. You can't say, hey, how your day going? It's a problem, right? You may wind up dead. And any of us could be somebody that you hear about on the news just by mistake. That's not how we set out our day to become. But the narrative has to change that everybody is out to get you, especially people that look like my brothers up here, right? So that's why we have to change that narrative that we're not the enemy, right? There are enemies out there, but it's not any of us or any of you all in this room.
I changed my Twitter profile about a year ago to say openly black, gay, and millennial in response to many environments, and especially in the DEI conversation, that try to box me into one particular identity over the other, right? I'm not more or less black because I'm gay. I'm not more or less gay because I'm millennial. I'm not more or less millennial because I'm black, right? Like I'm all of these things at all times. And so many conversations, even within what I would call historically underrepresented and underpowered communities, tend to pit identities against each other because there's a scarcity model that we can only be focused on one thing at a time, right? We can only be focused on promoting women. We can't really talk about race right now, right? We can't talk about sexuality right now. We've got to be focused on gender. Well, now we're talking about race, and we can only pick one. It can only be black or Asian or Latinx, right? Like, we're not even talking about indigenous, right? Like, or any other group. And so we tend to pit all the identities against each other. And it runs contrary because I often tell people we have to be intentional about what we're talking about, right? When we say diversity, diversity is all of us. Everybody in this room is some type of diverse, right? And so if we just have broad brush diversity initiatives, then that doesn't get us progress either. But we've got to be able to walk and chew gum at the same time.
Wonderful. And I would just simply say that the hardest struggle, so I've been on the producer side and I've also been on the kind of the managerial side, and I would just simply say the hardest thing to do is for people to really accept that you've made it, you've done okay, not because you're not black. People say, "Oh, of course you made it. You know, you do the DEI thing, right? You're that guy, right?" But I would line up against. It's fair to say, you know, I'd line up against some of the most talented people in this room, and hands down, put my paycheck next to yours, and say, "Look, okay, so now who's winning and who's not, right? Okay, so it has nothing to do with the color of my skin, has nothing to do with the DEI initiatives, has more to do with the fact that you're capable." right? And people understanding that being capable, you can be capable and be good at what we do, and it has nothing to do with the color of your skin. So we got 5 minutes to open it up for questions. So any questions from these astute gentlemen up here?
The second
You got
table.
you want a mic? Do we want to carry around a mic or no? Huh? Okay, so you just have to stand up and be loud.
The question was, of the respondents to the Next Step study, how many were Black women? And I want to say
Tell people how they can get it.
yes, yeah.
So it's important. I think everybody should read this.
Yes, and what is, to be fair, what's published is really the summary of the study. There's another 84 pages that we do a lot of presentations about. But if you go to NAIA.org, NAAIA.org, there's actually a pop-up banner right at the top that says download the study, so you can see it right there. Or if you follow us on any of our social media channels, you'll run across it very, very easily.
There you go.
Boom. At your fingertips. There were 700 or some odd responses to this study, and I want to say 71% were female. I don't know. I know the majority of that 71% was Black women, but that also included, again, from a role type, that's independent agents, brokers, carrier folks, HR people. We're the professional association for anyone that is Black in the insurance and risk management industry. So we got a little bit of everybody. So true to your experience of like the rooms that you're in, yeah, you're often the only one. And that was a recurring theme as well in the study.
Are we seeing a little more progress in perhaps more of the urban areas where there is a lot of cultural diversity compared to other parts of the country?
In what regard?
In terms of the diversity initiatives taking place, because, for example, I'm from New York, and we sat at the table earlier, and we say, hey, I was blessed because there's a guy, Vince Piniello, over here that I worked with MetLife that was very big on cultural diversity in the early 80s and 90s. So we have been, because we are the melting pot in New York City, we see a lot of diversity, and therefore we've worked with a lot of diversity. So I kind of think that in our area, maybe Chris in Chicago, you might find the same thing. I would tend to think that the urban areas are a little more diverse, or am I maybe not right? I don't know.
You're maybe not right. But New York would give you a false sense of reality. I love New York, and I feel welcome every time I go there because it does feel like this is the way it should be. But when you back out of New York, it's not that way. Same thing with Chicago. If you're in Chicago, it feels that way. DC, it feels that way. Mm-hmm. But when you go to Topeka, Kansas, or Richmond,
it doesn't feel.
It doesn't feel that way. Boston, Rhode Island, it doesn't feel that way. Excuse me. And it should feel that way everywhere, right? It should be welcoming everywhere. We should see the diversity everywhere.
I often encourage people to, particularly senior leaders and business owners, as you look at your calendar for the week and you think about walking into your workplace, like how many people of color are you interacting with that are your peers, your direct reports, skip levels? And so if you take out the security guards in the lobby as you walk into the building, if you take out the cafeteria staff or the people at the coffee cart, right? If you take out building maintenance workers who come to set up rooms like this, how many people of color are you interacting with from a business sense as well? So another just component of that as well. Gentlemen,
NAIFA thanks you. We're out of time. If you want to catch them at the break, they'll be walking around. So let's give a round of applause for Amir Aarons, Amir Ali, Omari Aarons, Amir Ali, and Pierre Greene. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you for having us.